Welcome to the Viral Solutions Podcast. The subject today is successful B2B, that's business to business. You're a business, your customer's a business. Successful B2B marketing. Why you need to play the long game. Growth hacks. Social media fads. Flash sales. What do they all have in common? They're overused by B2B brands that pay more attention to immediate returns than long-term growth. In short, they're shiny tactics that can easily distract you from what successful B2B marketing is really about. And that's playing the long game. We realize it's not exciting to talk about long-term strategy. Most podcasts and blog articles dazzle you with clickbait headlines that speak of less work and more gain. We're the guys telling you to work harder, even if you don't see an immediate return. We need to tell you the truth about long-term marketing strategy, even if it's unpopular. Here's the thing. Better results are not always the quickest results. Sure, an impromptu sale can reward you with some much-needed sign-ups and revenue. But abusing such tactics is not the way to achieve consistent long-term growth. In fact, taking advantage of every shiny new tactic that promises competitive domination and quick returns will have you running chaotically in circles and likely throwing away money in the process. In successful B2B marketing, long-term growth is the most stable kind of growth. It withstands industry changes, company mistakes, shifting trends, consumer finickiness. In this podcast, we're going to discuss the importance of the long game in successful B2B marketing. In part 2 of this podcast on B2B marketing, we're going to discuss actionable tips on building your brand so that it lasts. Ready? All right, let's roll. The biggest wins in marketing come from your long-term strategy. It's difficult to invest in a strategy that doesn't produce immediate results. We get it. It's kind of like putting gas in your car and waiting 6 months for it to run. It sounds ludicrous, which is why many B2Bs don't focus on the long game. It's just too hard to envision how it will reward them. And because of this, only 4% of B2B marketers measure impact beyond 6 months. This is according to an article posted by LinkedIn. To explain this more, let's first talk about SEO, search engine optimization. SEO takes time to see results. It requires consistency and hard work, and you might not see results for months or even years. Does that mean you should abandon SEO because you can't gain immediate results? Here's a hint. Ask businesses that rank on the first page of Google for top keywords that bring them hundreds or even thousands of new leads a month, if focusing on the long game was worth it. Not to mention that while you're researching keywords and creating high quality content, you're getting more in touch with your audience's needs and building your brand. Well-balanced businesses might also run pay-per-click ads in the search engines to get some quick returns. But at the same time, they focus on the long game of SEO. Long-term gains come from this type of brand building. The gains are not immediately visible, but without consistent output, you will hit the tipping point and experience the reward. Successful B2B marketing takes work. The balancing act. What do you focus on? The short game or the long? Balancing short-term and long-term strategy is challenging, even for larger brands like Salesforce. According to Colin Fleming, Senior Vice President of Global Brands, Events, and Customer Marketing at Salesforce, as reported by LinkedIn, and I quote, "It's an ongoing journey. Every year we need to determine where to put a demand generation dollar versus a brand awareness dollar. But we try to think about the bigger picture. So many companies live quarter to quarter, and Salesforce does too. But we do carve out space in our brains and our hearts to think about the 3-year and 5-year time horizon, and we make long-term decisions." End quote. That's from Colin Fleming, Senior Vice President at Salesforce. It's important to note here that we aren't recommending the complete avoidance of all short-term tactics. Quite the opposite. An effective, well-balanced marketing strategy has the right balance of short-term and long-term goals. Focusing too much on long-term brand building without growing your business in the short term can be harmful to your brand. We just see that a lot of B2Bs tend to focus solely on the short term and find themselves constantly chasing after revenue increases, which can wear a company down and set it up for failure. There has to be a consistent investment into a brand building strategy behind the scenes to solidify your business's long-term reputation and growth. It's key to successful B2B marketing overall. Building trust takes time. Short-term selling is valuable, but it won't produce a lasting effect in customers' minds like brand building. Customers foster long-term growth. Quick sales do not. Your target audience, yes, even other business professionals, must establish an emotional connection with you. Only then will they feel compelled to do business with you. Your brand must be memorable, and that takes years and years to build. When a customer feels an affiliation with your brand, it can spark sales long after the advertising campaigns end because the memory and the relationship is what lasts. Like other aspects of successful B2B marketing, building relationships and trust takes time. We don't have to tell you that it would be silly if you proposed to your spouse the first day you met. chances are you didn't even feel that lasting connection that withstands the test of time until years into the relationship. You can't speed up time when it comes to developing lasting connections. You have to play the long game, the way it was designed. Trust takes time, plain and simple. Brand building creates demand for the short-term sale. Brand building creates demand for your products, which equates to more consistent sales over time. But did you know that brand building is also necessary for short-term sales goals to work effectively? Think tofu, top of the funnel. What gets prospects to digest your content and want to continue the relationship with you to enter lower parts of the funnel? A strong brand. Quick B2B sales at higher parts of the funnel are challenging, especially if you are offering a high-ticket item or a monthly subscription model. Your customers will need to be wined and dined a little before they pull out their wallets and commit. This is where brand building comes in. So how does this all translate in B2C, business to consumer, versus B2B, business to business? B2Cs focus more on short-term sales and use loyalty programs to establish their brand over time. The model is different with B2B brands, so you need to adjust your mindset for successful B2B marketing. You aren't selling a vitamin or a t-shirt to a consumer. You're selling to another business-savvy professional who wants to be sure that before they invest in a service or piece of software, they understand its benefit to their company. It's easy to return a t-shirt and get your money back, but it's not as easy to invest time and energy into B2B product only to find it did not benefit you in the long run. You can't get that investment back. So what do you need to know about successful B2B marketing? In this part 1 of this 2-part series on successful B2B marketing, we discussed why building your brand and focusing on long-term growth is just as important as, if not more than, short-term sales. We talked about how balancing the two is critical to forming a solid marketing strategy, a foundation upon which you will grow over time and more easily withstand challenges and difficulties. In this podcast, we discussed why the biggest wins in marketing often relate to long-term strategy and brand building. We discussed how to balance long-term strategy with short-term tactics. We discussed why building trust takes time and how this ties into long-term growth. We discussed how brand building creates demand for your products, which equates to more consistent sales over time, but is also necessary for the short-term sale. If you're interested in figuring out how to give your brand real staying power, stick with us on the Viral Solutions podcast. We won't sugarcoat it for you. It's hard work, it requires consistency, and the right strategy. All of these are critical to short-term and long-term growth, and there are no shortcuts. If you want some advice on how to adjust your marketing strategy or create one from scratch, we'd be happy to help. Is your brand ready for a long-term marketing strategy? We suggest you start with a marketing audit by viralsolutions.net. We're at Viral Solutions. We're committed to seeing you succeed. Our goal is to double your sales, and we're not kidding. We do this with proven marketing strategies that will help your business for the long haul. This is where you stay up to speed in the ever-changing world of marketing with the Viral Solutions podcast and blog at viralsolutions.net.